Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about 6 games in rapid concession to try and get through my backlog of games that I'm probably not going to have a chance to give a comprehensive review to. But before I get into these reviews, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, Kienda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer in the UK. And if you use my discount code in the show notes, you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, but let's get into the games here. And I'm going to start from my least favourite to my most favourite. So the first one here is Immunowars. So this was very kindly sent to me by the publishers. This is a prototype version. And this was sold to me as being a more strategic dueling style game. Now, I did have my reservations going into that because I generally don't like dueling style games. And I also made that clear to these guys, and they said to me, give it a go. You'll probably like it. There's some good depth here, and a lot to explore. And sadly, my concerns did come true on this one. This is very much a back and forth take that style of game, as you are infecting each other with these different viruses and diseases, and then you're using cards to kind of protect yourself or cure yourself. And the thing that did kind of appeal to me about this game was the fact that most of the damage you do to other people is damage over time. So rather than just giving a big burst of damage to another person, you are slowly knocking their health down. So you have to kind of spin those plates to try and, fix yourself and to give yourself, to cure yourself as well as hurting your opponent. I thought the game tried a little bit too hard to be funny by adding these little tidbits on cards, trying to be a bit smart, and it didn't really land for me. Just not my style of gameplay at all. I thought there was some pretty significant factors in terms of the drawing of cards playing a big part on who was going to win and who was going to lose. For example, one of my opponents in this game happened to have only curing cards and nothing to hurt anybody else. And that just feels a bit annoying when you have a big deck of cards and you can't really do much with it. So unfortunately, despite me wishing the designers the best of luck with this game, and I'm sure there is a market for it, if your tastes align with mine, then I'm pretty sure you're not going to like this one. And it's pretty much just a random take that fest. So that is Immunowars. A big miss for me, and probably give that one about a 2 or a 3 out of 10. The next game is Mr. Cabbageheads Garden. So this is quite a cool, quirky little game, at least in terms of the visual appeal. I love the way this game looks. But this is one of those pattern building style games, as you are laying out all these vegetable cards in different orders, trying to get them next to each other and score points. However, every now and then these neighbours will come and tamper with your little puzzle. And it almost reminds me of a game called Peloponnese, which is a game I absolutely adore, where you're drawing these kind of threat tokens, but in this one it's a bit sillier. And when certain things trigger, whoever's got the most of these tokens out is going to affect you in a different way. So I did like the way you had to manage that risk and see, this person's going to likely hit me, and I can counteract that, or I can cope with that, rather than if this person came out, that is going to be absolutely devastating and I need to think of a plan B. But I actually think the puzzle part of this game is pretty generic. It's very standard pattern building, and you also get quite a lot of points based on these pre-arranged formations in the back of the rulebook, and they're really hard to remember, so I couldn't really think what I was going to build towards, and I had to keep on referencing back to that, or at least just stick to one that I knew by heart. So yeah, a little bit generic for me. It felt a little bit flat, but I do think it's quite nice for a solo game anyway, because this one is a solo game. I know there is a 2-player variant, but I haven't tried that. And it's a pleasant game, but again, it just felt like it was a bit lost in the shuffle, and there wasn't enough that it did differently. So that is Mr. Cabbageheads Garden. It's a shame because I love the look of it, but it's not going to be sticking around. And I'd probably give that one around a 5 out of 10. The next game I'm talking about is Bear Raid, and I want to make this very clear that this is pretty much a first impressions review. I've only played this one once, and I'm not going to be playing it again because this one absolutely sank like a lead balloon on the table. It did not connect with people at all, and despite being a relatively simple rule set, it is actually quite unintuitive and difficult to understand. So this is an economic stocks and shares style game, actually designed by Ryan Courtney, who is a designer who I always kind of take notice of. He's made games such as Pipeline and Curious Cargo. Seems to be quite hot and up and coming. This game is in that vein. It's very economic. It's very dry, pretty much almost perfect information, really, as you have a bunch of different companies depending on the player count, and all you're doing is either buying these stocks, hopefully buying them when they're cheap, selling them by raising the price when those stocks are high, and getting the most profit. It can be pretty damn nasty. as you can tank these companies so the stock's worth nothing, and then anybody who's invested in that stock basically wipes all that stock out. So they can end up throwing a lot of money down the drain and, you know, investing a lot of time, effort and money in order to get nothing in return. So that felt a little bit jarring and a bit mean for me just for the sake of it. I also thought it was quite hard to manage the board states because they're constantly going up and down in prices. You had to look what was coming next, and it all just became a bit confusing. And I just, you know, as I was teaching this, I just saw that it was not connecting with the people I was teaching it with. It goes on way longer than the box says. You know, the box says 60 minutes, but even in the lower player counts, it went on way longer than that. So yeah, I think, again, I am trying to be fair here by saying, look, I've only played this one once. I'm sure I did not get the full experience, but I instantly knew that this game was not going to be right for my game group. And particularly when it comes to that higher player count, when you're playing people or playing with gamers who aren't so, you know, they aren't so invested in the game you're putting out, they just want to be there for a good time. I don't think they're going to instantly connect with this game, and you're going to need a dedicated bunch of gamers to get the most from it. But still, I do have a lot of faith that there is a good game in here somewhere, but I don't think I'm willing to find it and explore where that game is. So unfortunately, yeah, Bear Raid was a bit of a miss for me, and I've kind of given that a very cautionary rating of probably about a 5.5 or a 6 out of 10. Next up, I have a Wolfgang Kramer co-design with Horst Reiner Rosner. This is El Capitan. So this is one of his games that certainly is not talked about anymore. It's a very dry Euro game. You know, Kramer he's known for some dry Euros, but generally his games have a lighter vibe to them. This is an area majority style game as you are travelling around this board and all these different places on this board. And you're basically trying to pay money to put these houses down and then basically collect income in return to do that. And you can also put these big cylinders down, which will mean you basically guarantee you income. There's some good competition for these is because once you land on certain spots, it will basically eliminate ones earlier on the board, so you can switch the majorities there. Very dry, pretty clear open information style area majority. The economic part of this game is very tight, especially in the earlier parts of the game. Very hard to manage your money, and you have to sacrifice a lot of turns to go back to the base to take out these loans. And if you take out too many loans, you're going to end up having to pay more and more back and potentially costing you. But there is kind of a point in the game where the flick switches, and then you start to get a bit more of a money income and start getting a bit more comfortable. I thought the game was very well designed, as you'd expect with a Kramer game. But I must admit, the fun factor from the game was somewhat lacking. It was a bit too dry for me, and that's saying something because I love dry games. But it was a bit too static and a bit too tight on the resources earlier in the game, where you just had to, almost were forced to take loans. But I did like it, but I certainly didn't love it, and I didn't extract a whole lot of fun from it. And I can see why this game has kind of faded into obscurity, because I don't think this is ever going to be anybody's favourite game, or nobody's going to really request playing it. So unfortunately, a little bit of a miss for me, a near miss. That is El Capitan. I give that one around a 6 out of 10. The second last game I'm talking about is a simple card game called CuBirds. So this one I actually do really like. I think it's a solid card game. It's quite a dynamic game as you build up these rows of cards. Then all you're doing is you're playing one of these bird types. And when you play one of these types, you have to play all of them in your hand, which means you might give opportunities to your opponent. And then basically what you're doing is you are trapping these cards in between, and between other birds, and then taking all of one type into your hand, which is really cool because you're trying to build up these sets. All these sets require different amounts. So if you have 2 of these flamingos, you can trade them in for a flamingo in your scoring pile, or you can trade in 3 flamingos to get 2 of them in your scoring pile. And I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect, I think it's 6 individual types of birds, or I believe it's 2 sets of 3, or maybe 3 sets of 2, something like that. So there's 2 different ways you can win the game. It flows really nicely, and again, there's like good player interaction about what you do, creates opportunities for your opponents, very back and forth, quite a dynamic market. I think the only issue with this one, and I have played this one a few times and I've enjoyed every play with it, but the competition for games like this in my collection are very strong. I have a lot of wonderful, great card games, And if I'm going to get CuBirds to the table, it means I'm not getting one of those games to the table. So I think this is pretty much a victim of other games being better than it. But in its own right, it's a very solid game that I would recommend you check out, because I think you're going to at least get 5 to 10 good games out of it before you're ready to move on. But I liked it a lot. Very smooth, very fast, and I recommend it. So that is probably about a 6 to a 6.5 out of 10 for CuBirds for me. And finally, the game that I'm talking about last is Last Will by Vladimir Suki. Now this one, to be honest, I probably should have done a full review for, because this is a really good worker placement game on the lighter to medium light end of the scale, but it's got a really cool theme based on the kind of Brewster's Millions film, as you are inheriting a bunch of cash, and your rich uncle, whatever it is, wants you to blow all that cash as extravagantly as you can to give you even more money. So the idea is that you're basically building up these cards and this engine to buy houses when they're expensive and sell them when they're cheap. You're trying to ruin them by making them depreciate. You can spend all these action points to have these big parties, and you're just trying to get through your money as quickly as possible. So the complete polar opposite to most games you play where you want to get money, this one you want to be the first to waste it all. What a great innovative and fresh theme, and it still holds up really well. Mechanically, the game also works wonderfully, as you'd expect with a Suki game. It has this great turn bidding system where you have to bid on how many actions you're going to take based on how many cards you're going to draw from all these different piles. And there's also this cool kind of little manipulation thing here with these buildings, where you can increase the price of some and reduce the price of others. You can recruit the help of all these different helpers, which might let you waste money even more efficiently. And again, I love this action point system where you're building up this tableau of cards and even expanding beyond your original capacity to do more and more things. I'd probably recommend that you do look more into this game if it appeals to you, because it is really solid and a lot of fun. And I think it would be unfair to give this one anything less than a 7 out of 10, because I think if you like medium to light worker placement games that take probably about 60 to 75 minutes to play, this one is amongst the best of them. So many things to explore, and is an absolute blast to play. So that is Last Will by Vladimir Suki. So that's it. Those are the 6 games I'm talking about. So hopefully these games have made sense to you. Again, I would like to have the time to give a full comprehensive review from them, but unfortunately I have so many games building up now and so many new ones coming in that I just don't think I'd ever find the time to do it. So this is this is the best option I have, unfortunately. But hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other videos too. Also be sure to check out Kienda, and also if you want to go the extra step, I do have a Patreon page, which I'd obviously welcome you to join. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.